when I edit, I pay a lot of attention to the performances and how to make them better and better, and body language. And I think that kind of adds, like, you know, how we are all sitting in one room and suddenly there is silence, and then one person will start humming or singing. It always happens, right? I think we all understand subconsciously certain things. Like you just said, that if I start a shot with a person blinking her eyes, it will mean, but when you watch it strung together, and if it is not making story sense or engaging you, I would rather not have it. I mean, you can always go back, read about them, go and watch other things, other interviews.
So first things first, and because she's an editor, we will have some clips playing where she will talk to us more in detail about editing. So we're trying to, Sujata and me are trying to do a meeting which is not exactly totally on cinema, but on her being the woman in an industry like this. So it's very interesting to be, I mean, we had a small chat with her last evening, and the life she brought to the table and the observations, which I think observation is such an important part of being an editor, and it was lovely. So what really attracted you to editing in the first place? Because you're from an IT background. We do see a lot of even CR members moving in from IT into these things. How did that movement happen?
Well, I mean, having grown up in a very academic family, I pursued an IT career because everybody else was pursuing it too. And I realized soon after that this is not my cup of tea at all. And I had this vague idea that I want to be an artist, but I didn't know what that means, and nobody in my family also knew. So I did a lot of odd jobs, and finally I applied for film school, which was like coincidence. I just did it. And then I got selected, and I had to choose which field. So I thought, okay, it would be easy for me to convince my parents with editing because I had just done IT and this is also related to computers. So I thought,
you're only relating to the computer, not to a hero.
Yeah, so it was really in pin, safety pin, like that. I think that is how editing happened. But once I got into it, I realized that it was just it was totally what I wanted to do. It was storytelling. It was editing is basically storytelling with pictures and sound, and how you can hold people's attention with just these things. So it was totally my cup of tea. My world just exploded. It was great, and then it just went on.
So you've been an editor, a director, and even an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about the similarities or differences about wearing these multiple hats?
I don't know. I really enjoy acting. I keep telling all my director friends if they have a role, I would love to do it, even if it is just standing in the background or something. So, actually, as an editor, you realize that you're working so much and so closely with performances, like how people, audiences perceive actors actually depends so much on the edit. So basically when you're cutting a scene, you are picking and choosing portions of the actor's performance which they sometimes may not even be aware of, and putting them together like piece by piece. So I don't know, acting is something that has always fascinated me, and perhaps even when I edit, I pay a lot of attention to the performances and how to make them better and better.
Yeah, you're a pretty face. Would love to have you as an actor. But speaking as an actor, there's something I've often noticed, that there is a certain rhythm to our movement. Even as people, the way we walk, the way we enter a hall actually follows a certain rhythm. Our body, as we age especially, we catch a very typical rhythm for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think editing is so much to do with that rhythm. For example, like I remember, like morning started with all the noise. I was going in a certain pace, and now when I'm doing my job, I'm like more settled and I'm breathing easier. So, tell us about how you catch this rhythm for different people, different projects. And as you said, so many things, the cutting point decides how much you convey. Especially something can be written in a story, right? If Salim and Javed are writing a story, they've written certain things. They might even visualize it and write it. And the actors have performed. The director has said cut at a certain point, but the editor gets to decide how long that shot is really maintained, like this nod and whether there's a further look. And then the subtext comes in a story. A lot of things we read in terms of non-verbal communication comes with all that. Tell us about working in those areas for us, especially from the works.
I think it comes back to observation. Like, I have a very keen interest in how people behave and body language. And I think that kind of adds, like, you know, how we are all sitting in one room and suddenly there is silence. And then one person will start humming or singing. It always happens, right? And so I think we all understand subconsciously certain things. Like you just said, that if I start a shot with a person blinking her eyes, it will mean something. And if I end the shot with the person blinking, it will mean something else. And things like, you know, if I'm talking a lot and moving my hands very animatedly, you will perceive me in a certain way. Whereas if I'm sitting quietly, you'll perceive me in a certain way. So all those things, I think, add up to the observation. And you just try and convey these things to the audience without saying anything. I think that is what editing is. That psychologically, I am directing the audience to look here, there, or think about a certain thing. Like, I always give this example. My father and I, we were traveling in a car, and 1 hour we're going, we have not reached anywhere. Suddenly there's that big sign. And in my head, I thought, oh my God, how long do we have to go? And immediately my father said, oh my God, how long do we have to go? So I think it is that we all think of the same things with certain visual cues, and editing is about finding those and putting them there so that you can take people where you want them to go.
Lovely.
So it's like that.
You have to be a good storyteller.
Yeah, I would say, and enjoy people, I think. Like, why do people do what they do? Why do they say what they say? I think that adds.
So I think sometimes we might think we are speaking about something very technical about filmmaking, but I think today of all times, all of us will relate to it because all of us are so active on social media, and there are apps with which we edit photographs or small videos. And so I think a lot of things she says will actually help us with those things also. So why is film editing, and specifically fiction format or non-fiction, how different are they? And I think you should also mention how different it is from everybody thinks we can edit because we have something in the phone there, and newer apps are coming. So many apps we get using. So tell us about that.
I think fiction storytelling, obviously, there's a roadmap, right? You know where you're going because there's a script. And what you can really work on is the engagement and the performances. And nowadays, films are shot with lots of cameras, like 4 cameras, 5 cameras. Then you have a lot of work to do. But otherwise, like say in a Salim Javed film, when only 1 camera is shooting, there are only 2 takes. There was not a lot of work for the editor. But now that has changed. But in non-fiction, I think you are writing the script on the table. So that is why for me it's very exciting, because you're not just like editing it, you're writing it, you're editing it, and you are also like creating that engagement. So in that sense, it's a more purer and more gratifying form of film to edit. But in fiction, of course, there's a lot of other fun. Like when I started doing fiction and I started editing songs and all, which you don't do so much in film school. It's so much fun. You know, it is the films we grew up with. So it is, yeah.
So what would you say for people who are editing on their phones? Because there are events happening and they want to cover something. So treat it like just coverage and then edit something or plan something and go about. I think that's something which will come very useful for people shooting on their phones.
I would say less is more. Don't put everything you have, because, I mean, what I usually see in reels and all is over information, over explaining, over saying things. So saying less is more, because what we do in films is that we say something and the rest of the things are being created in the person's head. And that is what creates engagement. Like I'm telling you one thing, just the tip of the iceberg, and everything else the audience is imagining. So that adds to the engagement from the audience. But if you say everything, then there is not so much engagement. It's like reading a book, right? Like if you read a book, my imagination is going to be different from yours. But if I see everything, then there is not so much interest.
So, like I've heard you saying you make documentaries and films. So, I've heard you saying that documentaries you breathe in and fiction you breathe out. So you could talk about that?
In documentaries, what happens is you're dealing with real people in real situations and actual emotions, right? Like you're interviewing someone or you're shooting some sequence where people are being themselves. So you also are real. Whereas in a fiction, everything is staged. Everything from hair, makeup, what is being seen behind, who is going to walk in the background, everything is designed. So you learn from real life and put it in a fiction film, is what I've always thought. That you go to real life, you get all the masala, and then you use it for your fiction film. So I think both feed off each other in that sense. So
And how did you, so coming to your latest release, I've often thought as an editor, we would know the film, but we wouldn't have known this is the person who edited it. We know the hero, and in Salim Javad's case, they wanted their names to be put on the poster also. We've gone through all those things. But editor is somebody who works so much with the footage, who knows so much about the actors because you're watching them again and again. You were telling us about this instance of where you were editing at home and they were like listening to the song again and again, right? So every angle, every fault they would know so well. But in spite of all that, when you created this film, as a director, when you did this, I think you became more famous in certain ways, or at least maybe that's why you're here this time, because you made this documentary, you directed it, just didn't edit it. You had another editor, by the way, right?
yeah.
So you directed it, and it was also about a famous duo who were writing, who were very brash, and it's produced by big people. So how important is all this, and what do you feel as an editor about this visibility which comes to other departments more?
I mean, that's something I've thought about a lot. Like, I used to have a gym instructor who, we were watching the Salam Namaste song where Saif Ali Khan is dancing and singing and Preeti Zinta is there in the background. And he said, I love Saif. वो क्या गाता है, वो क्या dialogue लिखता है. And I was thinking, he thinks that Saif has written these dialogues and Saif has decided that he now wants to dance. So that's how it is working out. I think, but that also is the magic of cinema, that you don't know somebody is putting it together. That is when you really believe it, right? Like you watch Titanic and you feel it is actually happening to them, and that's why I'm crying. So I think to not know who the editor is for the audience is a good thing, because you don't know that it is something so technical, something like somebody putting one brick after the other, then putting cement, then putting plaster of Paris. You don't need to know, I think, as an audience. You can just see the building and say, wow, kya building hai. But as a director, I guess, it's your vision. You have to take responsibility for what you have done or not done, or if it is good, bad, ugly. So there's no escape. So you have to stand outside the building like the security guard. So that is what it is. Even as an actor, like I did a small role in Love, Sex or Dhoka, and suddenly everybody wanted to interview me and all, and I was thinking, I've done so much work as an editor, I've done so many documentaries, nobody ever asked me. Now that I've done one small role which is for 4.5 minutes, everybody wants to take my interview, but that is how life is, I guess, in Bombay.
That's my good time to say that we have a national award-winning filmmaker there, a documentary filmmaker, Ramani,
Yes.
who also got the Bala Kailasa Memorial Award.
Yes.
And see, we wouldn't know. So, I think there are so many unsung heroes in cinema, and I think constantly in Cinema Rendezvous, the endeavor is to throw light on all these things, because somewhere as audience, us knowing those things makes a big difference. So speaking about both editing and direction, so for this docu-series, which is 3 parts, it was around the first episode. See, I have a very basic, I know Amitabh Bachchan, I know the films. I know one name called Salim Javed. I've seen it at some point of time. And I didn't know anything more until I rushed to, you're coming and I have to speak to you, I have to. And then it suddenly hit me, I've heard Amitabh Bachchan, Angry Young Men and all. And then it struck me, these 2 guys are the angry young men. So how did you go about finding the title for this? And how did this project reach you? Did you pitch? Did they pick you from your other editing work? Because I think being an editor was pretty important to directing this.
It was actually Zoya Akhtar's idea that, we were working together. We worked together on a few films in between. And we used to chat a lot about films, etc. And I was also working on a documentary called House of Secrets. It's on Netflix. It's a very interesting documentary on mental health. And I was working on it, so I was discussing it with her a lot. That is when she told me that she has this idea that she wants to make a documentary on Salim and Javed and their work, and she wants to call it Angry Young Men. I thought the name was so cool. I immediately told her that I would love to be a part of it, in whatever capacity. Then it took its sweet time, and then finally during lockdown we were chatting and she said, would you like to direct it? So I don't know, it was a very instinctive answer for me that yes, I would love to. Though I didn't know so much about the 70s cinema, I think it was a journey for me also, learning, but it was so amazing. It was really like, I've worked in Bollywood for 15, 16 years. But working on this documentary was a completely different view of Bollywood. Like how films were really made in the 70s, how people rallied with each other, how people banded together. Even things like how if your grandmother didn't like my grandmother, now you cannot like me. These kind of things you discover, and which is very interesting. I mean, it's so fascinating how Bollywood works. And how, So even though I'm not from here, now they tell me that now you are also a Nepo kid because of this journey, which is not true, just saying.
So
Kidding.
You think Angry Young Men is another way of storytelling now for the future projects or the future movies or documentaries?
I think every documentary brings with it its own narrative. It's very hard to say how, like even when we were shooting it, I didn't know exactly how I'm going to put it together. But, and we shot a lot, like I had close to 800 hours of material. And then to bring it down to 2 hours and also to have an effective and emotional narration was of course the challenge. Also, there's so much available about them. There are books, there's so many interviews they have given, repeated their stories, which I used to keep telling them, please stop giving interviews now, but it was hard. So I thought, okay, I'm going to focus on the emotional aspect of who these men are. Today they're very old. I mean, old age really struck me when I saw them because, all their old pictures, etc. These 2 dynamic, dashing men wearing denims, keeping the buttons open, etc. And then suddenly now their hands are shaking. They are these people who, they're dependent. So I thought I'm going to focus on that and I'm going to focus on what happened between them, etc. So
I found the structuring so interesting, the things you moved on. And I should thank you because I never knew Salim Javed was Salman Khan's father. And I understood that he had charisma enough to throw off his denim jacket too. And it is really nice seeing their younger pictures. And I was struck by the candid way in which they spoke about how they fell apart in the 3rd episode, or whether about the marriages, both of them going through the 2nd marriage, and the children speaking about this. And you've got wonderful set of people talking. So I want you to speak about the process of how you went about shooting, and also technically, I noticed that you were placing the camera invariably on the right or the center, not much on the left. So did you have instructions about all those things? The whole process of shooting.
I think the camera thing is because I was always sitting on the left of camera so that they look at me and keep the camera here. But it was also, we were shooting in very, very small places. We shot through the pandemic. So we were shooting in hotel rooms, etc. So it was also like, I think, not deliberate many times. It was just, there was no space. So it was like that. But I think shooting with them was very interesting because I shot with them many, many, many times, asked them the same questions. And slowly they started forgetting that the camera is there. Because also, I mean, they're very seasoned, right? Like they, if I ask them a question, they know why I'm asking it. So it's not easy to manipulate or navigate it. Manipulate is not the right word, but you know what I mean.
No, but I
So-
always think directors have to manipulate situations.
yeah,
in a nice
but you
way.
don't say it, right?
Ethically-
like, you don't say
ethically
it out
good.
loud. So anyway, so it was that. I think slowly they forgot, and also I shot over 3 years, and that is how it probably the trust, and they also. I mean, you know, we had a equation by then, so I think it was easy to talk about all those things. In fact, there's so many things I could not include. We are trying to release some deleted scenes, but there were so many things. I mean, personal, professional, going into every film. We talked in a lot of detail about each and every work. But what was happening was that it was becoming a sort of masterclass in screenplay writing or filmmaking, which was not so engaging, you know. So I thought I'll stick to the people and stick to who these people are as Salim and Javed. And to be honest, so many people, I mean, I asked on the road and all, everybody thought it's one person. And in Indore, there was one very funny guy. We asked him, so have you seen Sholay? Oh, many times I've seen. So I said, so do you know who wrote it? Huh, I know. I said, who? Ram Gopal Verma. He said. So that is, so even if they're famous, not everybody knows. So it's like, and so even when I was telling people that I'm working on this, I always tell them, so he's Salman's father and he's Paran's father. Oh, then they'll understand.
You didn't say that he's Zoya's father.
I mean, yeah, Zoya Paran's father.
So how did you go about, you said about 800 hours of footage. So how did you go about structuring? Did you come with an idea like I'm going to touch these things and then look for those things? Or did you have did you randomly shoot and then did you find the whole narrative there?
No, I started shooting and started editing soon after. So I knew that, okay, this is, I had a very vague idea that I wanted to be 3 episodes, Act 1, 2 and 3. And Act 1, like, you know, coming together, that story, how they, broke through. And second is, of course, the body of work and the beginning of conflict. And the third is conflict. So this was the main idea. But as we kept editing and shooting, it was a, you know, a feeding kind of cycle where I was shooting and then I was editing and then I was thinking, okay, this is missing. So that sort of a thing.
So how was it after a split of 30 years getting there?
Actually, they split when I was born. So for me, that was the story I used to tell them that, you know, now it's been a very long time. You split up, in fact, in the year when I was born. So now I am the messenger. But of course, I mean, they have not really not been meeting, etc. So it was interesting to see how it panned out. And they were also willing, I mean, I guess it is something that has given them closure too. Because meeting them together, in fact, that's the last thing we shot.
The
last
photo shoot.
Diwali. Yeah,
Okay.
photo shoot.
Yes.
Yeah. It just so happened that they were both invited to inaugurate the Diwali lighting in Dadar in Bombay. And I thought, okay, that's a great occasion for me to shoot. And they were okay with it. So that's how we did it. And it was quite nice. I mean, they were jibing, passing comments on each other. But soon I saw that when we were doing screenings, they were inviting people to watch it. It became more and more easy.
A couple of my friends who read the book on Salim Javed, which I haven't, I've only heard about it, did mention that this series was not giving them as much as the book did. Would you like to say something about it?
As I said, I mean, these were choices because in a book you can have a lot more information and trivia, but when you watch it strung together And if it is not making story sense or engaging you, I would rather not have it. I mean, you can always go back, read about them, go and watch other things, other interviews. So, I mean, yeah.
Personally, I liked it. I
Can't
liked.
please everybody. I mean, that's
Yeah.
fine.
But because that was discussed, I thought I should ask you. Personally,
Yeah, a lot. In fact, a lot of people have asked me also that why have you not given the exact reason for their breakup? Like it happened at 10 a.m. on that Tuesday. I was like, maybe that was.
but thanks, the docu gave us the visual thing of how they look. I loved looking at them, even when they were 90 and 73. But tell us, the choices you made in terms of you're not used a voiceover all through. Their voices are speaking, and then there's shots of them moving around, looking out, and all those things. And certain parts you've gone on to where others are talking. So, what dictated these choices? How did it happen? Because that would be interesting for people who want to know about editing.
Because they were both there, I didn't want to use a voiceover. I mean, who is the third person? I mean, all those ideas did come. Let Amitabh Bachchan do the voiceover, etc. You know, he's a third angry young man, which he is. But I thought it is about them, and so I didn't feel the need for a voiceover at all. I used their voices to.
And your questions also. You're questioning.
I'm the one who's.
And you didn't want to come in the visual at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm there in a couple of shots which I tried a lot to remove because, I mean, as a voice, it's nice. But as a visual, then you wonder who is this, why, what. I don't want to, like, get into the frame. I never wanted to get into the frame. But as a voice, yes, because certain questions you ask them, you want to hear the question. Like when we were talking about marriages and, you know, the question was asked that, so how did you decide to get married again? And, you know, the answer makes sense when you hear the question. So, where he says that if you have fallen in love, you'll know, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A lot of insights when they speak.
Yes.
Even that portion where Javed Akhtar speaks about narration and he starts reading to the such a lovely shot of all of them sitting around and all of them such great names. And we get to him, listen to him speaking about narration. I wanted to ask you about how do people come and narrate things to you when it is fiction? So the story is written and shot. Do they come and narrate it to you? Because I often find some of the best directors are not great at narrating it. They would visually explore it. So how do people come and tell you while they want the editing to be done?
As an editor, nobody narrates to you at all. No director ever narrates to you. They send you the script, hopefully in time before you have to start editing. But other things also happen that they only connect with you once everything has been shot.
So you don't get any instructions about this is the feel they wanted, what they tried with the visuals.
I mean, they may give instructions, but ultimately, when you watch the rushes, you know that this is what I have to work with, not with the instructions, right? Like as an editor, you're only working with what you've got. And as a director, you're creating that. So that is the difference. And as an editor, I mean, even if people say that this is the instruction, this is what I want, I'm like, how? You know? So you have to work with what you've got. You have a face, now you have to put makeup on it. But this is the face, right? You can't change the face. Yeah.
So you work with Yash Chopra, right? I think we are all members over here who have watched most of Yash Chopra films. We've grown up seeing them. So how was it to work with him in his last production?
It is his last day. In fact, he didn't even see the final film.
Yeah.
It was amazing. He was so funny. And his first agenda was what he would say menu. Wherever we would go for a shoot, it would be like, what is the menu? We have to figure out what are we going to eat. Yeah. It was amazing. It was a great experience to work with him.
Lovely. And before we open the questions to the audience, Suja, do you have any other question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask, this is more on a personal thing, nothing to do with films and editing. I know you love trekking. Yes.
Yeah.
How does it help you in your work? Because she just finished Mount Kilimanjaro, she peaked it.
Thank you. I don't know, I love being in the mountains because I feel films are such a like a bubble, right? Like it's a bubble, and you start feeling this is everything, and you start believing that you're very important. But when you go on a trek, it suddenly becomes very even, in the sense all you're really concerned about is eating, sleeping, and going to the toilet. These are the only three things which are important. So I don't know, I really like that. I think it brings you down to reality. It strips you of your pride and ego, which is good, I think. And it's good as a filmmaker because you're more open to people, you're not judging them, which you tend to do, I think, when you start believing in the bubble that you're living in. That's when you start becoming a boring filmmaker, I think.
Editing is such a process where you work in isolation with the computer. So, how do you manage that? And has being an editor changed you as a person over the years?
Yeah, it's made me very comfortable with solitude. It's made me very, very comfortable being on my own. I'm not looking for company all the time. And in fact, it was very funny when became a director and suddenly there are 100 people looking at me for instructions. I'm like, oh, I have to tell them. Because you're so used to not speaking as an editor for hours together. So, but it was an interesting transition to do. And what editing also is, which is different from direction, it's very meditative. It just completely stops all thinking, and you're just present with what is going on. And that to me is very precious. I feel that you go into the edit room, and when you come out, you're a different person because you're just quiet. It feels like you've meditated for 8 hours. To me, it feels like that.
So, can you give us a small demo, show some clip, and talk about how you went about editing it so that people see the difference and learn something from that too? So, she said she's got a clip from Kahani, a film most of us would have seen.
Actually, when we were doing Kahani, the script was such that it had a lot of dead ends. Like you go looking for the husband, the missing husband, you find a dead end, then you find a dead end, and you find a dead end. So again, we thought that okay, we have to work with emotion, and so this is a montage that. Maybe I should show you the before and after just to show you what we did in the edit and how it finally appears in the film. So it was not in the script, but I just felt that to peak the emotion, because Pujo season has started in Calcutta and she's obviously feeling very lonely. So how can we enhance that loneliness so that it like prepares you for the climax? So this is from the edit. You'll see a lot of blue screen and things like that.
Right, Nisa. And this process, what she's doing now, editing, is after that, there are certain other post-production processes like color correction, the DI and all that happens. And she would be working with original sound. So the way she sees it actually defines a lot about what we see eventually also. Yeah.
As an editor, you spend a lot of time with that mouse going round and round.
The patience builds.
Yeah. So right now that Sudarshan Chakra is going like this.
Are there many editors in India, women editors?
Now there are. In fact, when I did Band Baja Bharat in 2010, first time I worked with a big studio, Yash Raj, and I was the only woman using the ladies' toilet. So if I need a break, I can just go chill there, do whatever I want. Now we have to wait. So I guess there are more women working as editors.
So do you face any roadblocks because it's being a male-dominated film industry, especially in editing?
I won't say it's easy at all, but it's getting better and better. I think when I joined also, in late 2000s, 2008 was my first film, Oi Lucky Lucky Oi. It was also the time when a lot of women-centric films were being made. So it was okay for women to work. But of course, for the first 10 years of my life, I only worked with men, male directors. And the first time I worked with a female director was after 10 years. So that's the kind of difference. So I won't say it's easy, But I think success helps. Success makes you gender agnostic. You're no longer a man or a woman if you're successful, I think. So, but if not, then I won't say it's easy. But it is getting better because I think women are also like now we have a lot of unions. We have, what they call Maitri. So, where women are helping other women. And also, what happens is that if you have women in positions of power, like producers, financiers, then it's easier. But if all the top tier people are men, then it's slightly tougher for women, I think. So that is changing now. I'm very hopeful. I mean, I've seen a huge change in the last 15 years.
So we constantly, when speaking about script, we speak about the female gaze. That is there in female gaze in the editor?
Absolutely. Like I would say, Kahani is completely female gaze. In fact, I'll also show you a small clip if we have the time from Band Baja Barat. Because when I read the script, I thought it is completely from Bittu's point of view, Ranveer Singh's character's point of view. But while editing, I felt that we need the girl also to be a prominent part. Because that is when there is a play between the two. So we reshot a lot of things to give her a little more importance. And I thought that is what female gaze does. Like I remember I was doing a film, I've spoken about it before also, where there is a swimming sequence happening. And when the woman is coming out of the pool, she's coming out in slow motion in her bikini. But when the man is coming out, he's coming out normally. I'm like, why is that? He should also come out in slow motion, or both of them should come out normally. So, these things, if there is a woman in the middle, you kind of stop these things. Like there was another sequence where this couple is meeting for their anniversary, and the woman says, "What? You've not got me a gift?" And she throws hot soup on his face. I'm like, who's this woman? Who is this woman if you don't get her a gift for 1 year dating anniversary or something? She's going to burn you with soup. So, I really fought and we deleted that scene. It's not there. It does not exist in the universe, thankfully. But, this is the way you kind of put things in people's head that this is how women are. Women are not like that. I don't know anyone who would burn you with soup if you don't get her a gift. Yeah.
But you're going to get that answer. Somebody somewhere did it, and that's why it's got to be so.
But it's not majority, right? We are
Good that you fight. We have somebody like you to fight that.
A documentary that is not of a certain kind, which does not have as much background music, which has, because even this, I would say it has a certain pace, right? It's made for engagement. Basically, when we were watching it, we felt that for the climax, for you to completely empathize with her, that she did this, you also need to feel closer to her. So the whole montage's idea was that you stay with her, that you feel her loneliness, that she's in a city which is very festive, people are with their families. And I use my reference background tracks, like what I showed you in the Kahani sequence also. I used Motorcycle Diaries or something. And then it goes to the background score person. And they compose it according to their, whatever they want to do. And then I recut it in case